Oh, which just muted himself. Hi, I'm Joel Christensen. Welcome to Reading Greek Tragedy Online. I'm coming to you today from Waltham, Massachusetts, and Brandeis University, and I'm super excited to share this afternoon with you. We're sponsored by the Center for Atlantic Studies, the Kosmos Society, and I'm here today with special guest Alicia Stallings, and we're bringing you the Homeric Battle of Frogs and Mice, or as we know it in my household, the Petrarca Mumakia. Alicia, you probably have nicer things to say about it than that. But so today we're going to see, I think, the first ever YouTube performance of the Homeric Battle of Frogs and Mice. Can you tell people a little bit about what this thing is that we're dealing with today?
Well, I'm saying hello from Athens, Greece, where it's a bit later. It's 10 p.m. So I would say it's a pseudo-Homeric. It's in the style of Homer, but for the ancients, it was Homer. And even for the early moderns, it was supposed to be Homer in his lighter vein. It's short, which is one of the great things that it has going for it, which is appropriate for a tiny epic about little animals. It's in beautiful Homeric Greek. It's highly elusive. I think the first two lines allude to Hesiod and Callimachus. You have everything you want in a Homeric epic, I think, in an Iliadic epic. You have high-born heroes. You have discussions that the gods have amongst themselves. You have the classic arming scenes that we expect in the Iliad. You have Aristeas, where, you know, people do amazing things that are beyond mere mortals. But the catch is that it's about frogs and mice.
Sorry. Yeah, about frogs and mice. So Alicia, I think most people should know this, but if they don't, you've written translated one of the best versions of this I think we currently have in the English language. It's been praised, I think, by everybody who's read it. What drew you to this weird little animal war poem?
Well, I think I must have been reading something entirely else and came upon a reference to it. And I thought, is this a thing? Is this really a thing? Because I think now it's kind of coming into its own. Only recently have there been such as yours here. For a long time, it was ignored by scholars in English. I'm not sure about other languages, but there were no critical editions of any recentness whatsoever. So it was kind of ignored. But then when I started to look at it, like George Chapman, on first looking into Chapman's Homer, does a translation of it because he wants to do the translation of all of Homer. And so at first, I think I couldn't believe that it existed. And then I went looking, and not only did it exist, but it exists so wonderfully and roundly and three-dimensionally. So yeah. The Greek is really good. It's playful also. I love that the names of the mice, like Psycharpax, is like this crumb snatcher. You have Psychnathos, who is the frog, who is pufferthroat. So, there's all of this delightful stuff going on. But, it's good Greek. It's got good vocabulary, and it has all of these, things that you're looking for. And I guess I was also interested in it because there was a rare book that had been acquired by the Gennadios, which is the first version of it that was printed in Germany in 1531, I want to say. I went and looked at it. I was surprised how small it was, but that's part of the charm of the poem is for early printers of Greek books, it's the first book that gets printed in Europe in Greek. Entirely in Greek. And part of it is that it's short. It's easy to print. You don't have to print the entire Iliad. You can print a full book of Greek. But it's quite thin. It's like chapbook size.
Yeah. No, I think like you, I got interested in it mostly because of that process of discovery. For those people who don't know, the Oxford edition of Homer is 5 volumes, right? 2 on the Iliad, 2 on the Odyssey, and then there's volume 5 that has the hymns and other things. And I remember being in graduate school, and I opened that other things book, and just like you, Alicia, I was like, wait, is this thing for real? And apparently I told a graduate student colleague at the time, and this must have been 2003, I'm going to write on this someday. And I only found this out later because when my commentary with Eric Robertson came out on it, the woman Danielle Lalonde sent me a message. She's like, "Oh, you finally wrote on it." I'm like, "I said I was going to write on it," right? And it sort of, I think, inspires a sort of wonder because it's animal fable. It is highly like a playful Greek, and then, as you say, it's short. Like you can read it in an afternoon. Right? It's fun. So, one of the things you mentioned about it, Alicia, was that ancient audiences and not so ancient audiences, especially Byzantine people, really loved it. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the attraction that it had in that period?
Well, I think one of the things that also interests, I live in Greece and to a certain extent in Greek. And, when you, as a Western student, when you learn about the Renaissance, it's like the Renaissance happens because Greek is rediscovered, these Greek manuscripts are rediscovered, but it's never explained how that happens. It just happens. But, it's highly corresponding to the fall of Constantinople in 1453. And this flood of refugee Greek scholars who came with their knowledge of how to teach people Greek and with their manuscripts. I imagine this manuscript came over many, many times because it was a standard Byzantine Greek textbook for teaching people how to read Homeric Greek. So I kind of love that it's always been appealing to students. That's part of its purpose. It's pedagogical. And, it is one of the first books that gets printed in Europe, and it's where people learn their Greek from. When they're learning Homeric Greek, you can't afford to buy a first edition of a printed Iliad, but you can afford, so I think it's one of the things we have the most numbers of manuscripts and printed manuscripts of.
You're absolutely right. And the manuscript tradition is kind of a nightmare if you want to look at the text. And another thing you said earlier, I think that's true, is it's having a moment. I think there were commentaries in German and Italian in the 70s and 80s. And then M.L. West, in his Loeb edition of the Homerica, wrote a charming translation of it, 2 decades ago. And then our commentary came out in 2018, your translation 2019, Michael Hosty's much more erudite translation in 2020. So it's really sort of there. But one of the things I've always been interested about is how was it enjoyed, right? It was like we read it, people learned about it, but was it ever performed? Alicia, have you ever seen a performance of this play?
I have never heard of a performance of this. I guess it does work as a play, and so much of it is in, direct speech, and, it is very dramatic.
Right. And so I said a play because I know Paul's turning it into one. But, you're right. It's dramatic. It's a set speech. It's a short amount of time. And so it fits on the stage in a period you could really imagine. And so I remember reading this and thinking of the old video game by Nintendo. I don't know if you know it, Battletoads, right? And so it's like these like muscular toads with big weapons. And thinking, a cartoon of this would be pretty amazing. But that's one of the things I really appreciate about your edition is that you have those original illustrations.
They were fun too.
Right.
I really wanted it to be illustrated because I think that is it's one of the elements of it. You think of it as an animation, things of that sort. There are even ancient Egyptian paintings and so forth that show, mice doing things and other animals doing things. So I think we've always kind of enjoyed watching animals perform human dramas.
So, Alicia, it's clear that we're both really excited about this performance. But I was wondering, what are you looking forward to? And how do you feel about puppets?
I think puppets will be a very good way of showing this. I'm excited about it. I grew up loving the Muppet Show and the importance to me of puppetry, I guess, is quite high. People of my generation who grew up with both Sesame Street and the Muppet Show, for me, the only thing better than having an illustrated Frogs and the Mice would be a puppet performance.
Well, and one of the things about puppets, right, is that they're both real and unreal, tangible. And I think, there's the Muppets are a great case, right? Because in Sesame Street, it's clear that these puppets are for children. But in the old Muppet Show, right, it pushes the boundaries a little bit. And one of my favorite genres, and this is a very small genre, are television shows where people get turned into puppets. It's live action, but then suddenly there's a puppet episode. I don't know, Alicia, if you were ever a fan of the show Angel, but there's an episode called Smile Time where the whole team gets turned into puppets.
I was a big Buffy fan. I don't think I ever fully transferred to Angel, but I can. There are some creepy puppet episodes in Buffy also. I think they're part of that uncanniness and I think it's one of the things I had people not sure whether they could give the battle between the Frogs and the Mice to small children because of the violence. But I think, kids who have seen Tom and Jerry understand that, this is supposed to be cartoon violence. So maybe puppets, though, might up the scariness a notch. I'm kind of interested to see how the violent deaths, the graphic violent deaths are going to play out.
Well, and that's always, I think part of that tension between what we think about violence in mimetic performances, right? If you're reading it, your mind creates it to the extent that you really understand it, right? And your own experiences draw from. It's very different if you're watching, say, a Quentin Tarantino film, right? I don't think we quite want a Tarantino Betrachomologia, but maybe, I don't know if you know Peter Jackson's old film, Meet the Feebles. But there may be some space there. But if you were to, in your mind, imagine the platonic ideal of a performance of this, mini epic, what are some of the elements you'd really look forward to?
Well, I'd be interested to see how the scene on the lake plays out in puppetry. That could be difficult with the snake. I don't want to do too many spoilers, though. I mean, the ending has a whole different cast of animals, so I'm interested to see what happens with that. And are we going to use human beings for the gods, showing that kind of different register of beings? So I'm really curious to see. And are we going to be able to tell the mice apart, the frogs apart? Are they going to have personalities? And how are they going to do the arming scenes?
All right. So I think I'm going to look to see what the narrator's like. I think, like you, how the animals work out too.
Thanks, Alicia. I knew we'd have a lot to talk about when it comes to the Betrachomologia. So, with everything we've said in mind, and acknowledging that it's super late where you are and we're all dozing off a little bit, I think we can relax and enjoy this new version of the Betrachomologia that has been transformed by the magic of puppetry.
I start my song as every poet chooses, by calling on the company of muses. Oh, come into my heart, I bid you please. Bless this fresh tablet balanced on my knees. Make sure the fame of this huge contest carries the handiwork of that warmonger Ares to every ear as I set forth the tale of how it was the mice came to prevail over the frogs' amphibian alliance, a feat to emulate the earth-born giants according to the legends men impart. And this is how the battle got its start.
I'm gonna have to talk afterwards.
One day, a thirsty mouse approached the brink of the lake and dipped his muzzle in to drink. No water could be welcome or brisker. He'd only just escaped death by a whisker. At Bane, the weasel. As he slaked his thirst, a boom-voiced swamp joy spied him and spoke first.
Who are you, sir? Whence come you to this pond? Speak, stranger, from what parents were you spawned? Don't lie. If you're a friend that's good and true, I'll take you home and give fine gifts to you. I am King Pufferthroat. Throughout these bogs, I am renowned as leader of the frogs. Elias, Lord Mudworth, was my sire. My mother was the princess of the mire, and I was bred upon the riverbank. But I can see that you must have some rank, good-looking, strong, no ordinary mouse, the crowning glory of a royal house. A fighter famous in the field of battle. Tell me your pedigree, and do not prattle.
Crumb-snatcher answered him in winged words.
My race is known to men and gods and birds. But since you ask, Crumb-snatcher is my name. Brave bred Nora, my father, and my dame, the daughter of King Antune, Nibblecorn. In old wainscoting was I bred and born. She fed me there on figs and walnut meat, and gave me dainties of all kinds to eat. I'm so unlike you. How can we be friends? Our natures are designed for different ends. You live out in the water as you're able, while I'm used to eating from man's table. I never missed a fresh loaf kneaded thrice, tucked in its tidy basket, or a slice of marble jam, or pastry stuffed with cheese and sesame, as flaky as you please. Or liver roped in fat like fine white silk, or cheese that's freshly curdled from sweet milk, or heavenly honey cake that's so divine, one whiff makes even the immortals pine. All dishes cooks prepare with every spice, for the banquets of mankind are fit for mice. In battle, I'm brave and don't hold back, but plunge into the thick of the attack. Two things there are in this great world and wide, of which I'm well and truly terrified. The hawk and the weasel, pilferers of breath. And the trap, in whose cruel doors lies tricks and death. The weasels are the worst, the sort who find you holed up in your hole. I hate that kind. But back to food. I do not eat or seek the radish or the kale or pale green leek, parsley or pumpkin. I do not partake of salad like you people of the lake.
The Frog King smiled, his answer to him such.
You boast your belly overmuch. We too have many wonders to explore, both in the pond and on the marshy shore. For Zeus has given us the power to roam in either element alike at home. Amphibian, possessing double lives, a frog both hops upon the mud and dives under the water. If you want to know about my world, there's much I'd like to show. Just climb up on my back. You'll be all right. As long as you make sure to hold on tight, I'll carry you with honor to my house.
He spoke and offered him his back. The mouse got on at once. He threw his paws around the frog's smooth neck, and with a nimble bound leapt on his back. And while dry land was near, he was delighted and felt no fear, rejoicing in the frog's smooth, easy stroke. But when the wine-dark waves began to soak him to the skin, he wept tears and bewailed his dismal change of mind and looked and quailed. So strange it was. He longed to put his feet on land, and chill with dread began to pleat and try to use his tail as an oar. and begged the gods to let him reach the shore. But as the dark waters broke around his head, he cried aloud, and this is what he said.
The bull upon his rivers did not convey Europa, Cupid's cargo, in this way. Across the sea to Crete, not how this frog takes me across the water to his log on his green back.
Just then a water snake appeared and reared its neck above the lake, red sight to both, and Pufferton dove down, not thinking that he had left his friend to drown. And the mouse, abandoned, fell into the rain, and squeaked in terror of a watery grave. And many times he sank down in despair, and many times he struggled back up for air. In the end, he could not flee his fate. His wet fur pulled him under with its weight. Sinking, cried out one last time.
Frog, ye shall be punished for your crime. Ye shrugged me from your back, base trickery, as from a rock a sailor wrecked at sea. Villain, were we on land, I would have won at boxing, wrestling, any distance run. But you misled me, cast me in the water. God has an eye for justice, and my slaughter will not go unavenged. You'll pay the price. You won't escape the army of the mice.
But on the marshy shore sat Lick-a-Plate, who saw him perish and began to keen, and ran to tell the mice all he had seen. And when they learned about the fatal bath, the mice were all seized with a dreadful wrath, and bid their messengers to tell each mouse to meet at daybreak at Bread Gnor's house, the father of that poor corpse on the pond which floated belly up, and lay beyond the shore's reach in the middle of the deep. At dawn the mice arrived with hasty creep.
Oh, friends, though it may be I've suffered worst at the webbed hands of the frogs, I'm just the first. They mean harm to you all, but woe is me. For now I have no sons who once had 3. One child I had the hateful weasel stole, snatching him when he strayed outside the hole. The second, cruel men lured to his doom. They'd set a strange device out in the room, newfangled, crafted out of wood to snap. Oh, bane of mice, contraption called the trap. And then, beside these 2, I had another, the favourite of me and his dear mother. That third son, Pufferthroat has taken down.
I am no murderer. Did neither slaughter a mouse nor see one drowning in the water.
He dragged him out upon the deep to drown.
No doubt the mouse was clowning by the lake and trying to swim like us, drowned by mistake. And now these wicked mice besmirch my name with crime, a fraud, all innocent of blame.
Come, let's equip ourselves from head to toe in splendid arms and march against the foe.
Come then, let us discuss how to destroy these wily mice and how to best deploy our forces. I think we should arm ourselves and muster on the bank right where it shells. And as the army charges, we should each take hold of the nearest mouse within our reach and seizing him by the helmet, pitch him down into the lake. In this way, we shall drown the sinkers. Then we shall erect with pride a monument to our glorious mousicide.
And Ares, lord of war, armed one and all. Zeus called the gods up to the starry skies and bid them look down at the enterprise. The mustered forces, warriors 1,000 strong, mighty and great, and brandishing their long javelins, 2 armies in the style of the centaurs or the giants. With a smile, Zeus asked, "Who of the immortals will help, or mice?" Which side will you go? For they rejoice every sunrise. The border in your temple, day and night, every food is left. Zeus spoke, and this was the reply she made.
Oh, Father, I shall never go to aid the mice, however desperate their plight. For what they've done to me, it serves them right. Garlands that they mar, the lamps they spoil, to bring them over for the old world. And what eats at my heart is this: they chew holes in my sacred bread. Away with the clockworks, they assume no small pain. I must pay someone to mend it. We have because someone will lend it, meanwhile charging me the interest, thing that we immortals most detest. I borrowed for the wool, and now I don't. I have to show for it. I won't, however, help the frogs or take their part, but they are most untrustworthy at heart. Like, coming back from war the other day and craving sleep, exhausted from the fray, I could not catch a wink. I am not joking. For all their din, they would not let up a croaking, and so I lay awake with aching head until the cockcrow roused me out of bed. So, gods, let us not go to either's aid, lest one of us get injured with a blade. For they fight web to paw, and are not awed to come within a whisker of a god. Let us instead sit here at this safe height and watch the battle for our own delight.
And from the sky, Zeus sent a brilliant battle of thunder as the omen of a dread battle. And first, loud Boomer's spear went with a quiver right through poor Nimbleman and struck his liver. Then Holehider at Mudworth's son took aim, and with his stout spear jigged him through the frame. Hot Creeper struck Beeteater with a blow right to the heart and laid the hopper low. Catchfly next saw Cheese Eater at the sedge and slew the mouse at the water's edge. One look at Chiselham made Minty shake, throw down his spear and jump into the lake. While Waterman cold-blooded grew yet colder, Pot Creeper dashed his head in with a boulder, so that his brains went oozing out of his nose, staining the earth around him shades of rose. Next, noble Bogsworn charged at Lickerplate, and on his spear the rodent met his fate, and darkness veiled his eyes. When Leaky saw the mouse fall dead, He dragged him by the paw and drowned the lifeless body in the water. Crumswiper, to avenge his comrade's slaughter, before the frog got back to dry land, poked him with a spear, and so the hopper croaked. And Breadnor upon the big toes smote, the last to leave the lake. King Pufferthroat, limping, Pufferthroat hopped from the fray, and so afraid, he tried to get away by diving in a ditch to flee his death. But Whiskers saw him stagger out of breath, and breaking through the ranks, rushed down the field and hurled his spear. The needle struck the shield, but there it stuck fast. And then Oregano, that godlike warrior, dealt the mouse a blow upon his four-shelled helm. All were gone, for he seemed more like Ares than a frog. Alone of frogs, he held the rodents back. But then the mice surged forward in attack, and seeing those brave knights, he did not make a stand, but sought the safety of the lake. Morsel Snatcher, meanwhile growing warm for battle, threatened to take the frogs by storm, came at them swinging, sending many frogs to Hades, while the rest fled to the bogs. Then Zeus took pity on the frog's demise, and shook his head. What is this before my eyes I see? Oh, what brave and dreadful feat! None pursues the frogs in their retreat. Quick, send Athena with her saber like the air himself to stop that mouse. Thus Zeus spoke. Then his wife, Hera, replied,
Neither the Lord of Strife, the dreadful Ares, nor your warrior daughter in Olympus has the strength to stop the slaughter. Let's all haste to their aid, or you could drop one of your thunderbolts to make it stop.
She spoke, and Zeus took up a blazing bolt and sent it spinning from his hand. The jolt made all alike, the mice and frogs. But all the more sought to annihilate the fighting race of frogs. Their strength was great. And so they might have done it, given the odds, if not for Zeus, the sire of men and gods.
Right in the nick of time to aid the frogs from dying in the spine.
Thus out they came, with backs like arms, crooked claws, cross-eyed, sidestepping ranks on ranks, with eyes chest high and hides immune to stabs, twin-horned, unyielding nation of the crabs. And soon the mice were frightened, on the run, while in the west the setting of the sun announced to all the one-day war was done.
So, Alicia, come and join me. Sorry, I'm still reeling from the mouse names that we had there at the end, sort of playing on names that I think anybody who enjoyed the ancient Battle of Frogs and Mice would absolutely love. But you know, we'll bring the puppeteers and the director in a bit. But I'd love to talk a little bit with you, Alicia, about your translation and your sort of first responses to this debut of the puppet version of the Battle of Frogs and Mice.
Well, I was very surprisingly touched by the pathos, the bathos of the let's see if I can get my videos up.
There we go.
I was really, and this is one of the things I really like about the Frogs and the Mice. Yes, it's kind of funny because it's happening to frogs and mice, but there also is a real bathos to it. And like having the watching the mouse drown was really very moving. And I was quite struck by the flickering of the human battle scenes over the mouse scenes, and making us realize that, you know, this is also, you know, about human conflict, even as it's about mouse and frog conflict. So I was quite surprisingly touched, and I really loved where the rallying of the mouse army and the frog army were interwoven, which they're not in the poem. We get one, I mean, because you know, the poem can't do that. It does one thing and then another thing, and we compare them. But I loved how in the dramatization, they simply overlapped. And I thought that was kind of a good sense of the conflict getting out of control.
Yeah, no, to geek out on Homer stuff for a minute, there's this whole thing in Homeric studies called Zelinsky's law, where you can't have contemporaneous action in Homer. But the fact is, you can't have contemporaneous action in linear narrative as it is, right? That's something you do in like side-by-side screens in video. So I agree with you completely that was really effective, because that's, I think, what's supposed to be happening in the poem. I also found I loved how charmingly they made the narrator writing also a mouse. I thought that there was some real sort of Muppet Christmas Carol energy to that decision.
I think my translation suggests that also. There's some, and I remember copy editors had a fit because I spelt tail T-L-A-L-E as T-A-I-L. But I think also, given the fact that I've got a mouse doing some of the introductive material in the book, I think does suggest that it's not a mouse of a kind who is setting the scene. So I really appreciated that. I thought that was great and appropriate.
Yeah, it really was. And as a note for the viewers, we had a technical glitch in the first part of what we just watched, so the music didn't come through, but eventually we'll correct it in the video version on YouTube, and you'll get all the great sounds. Because to go with some of those images, I mean, I didn't even know we were missing music in the beginning. I thought we were just going for,
and I'm sorry, I think I spoke a little bit. I didn't realize I wasn't muted. Maybe that can be fixed as well.
Trust me, in the Zoom era, people have had far more embarrassing live mic moments.
At least we're not launching a presidential campaign or anything.
Oh, Jesus, right? Or maybe we are.
Or maybe we are.
Right? Frogs and Mice 2024. So I found like I agree with you. The tone of the images is hard, because like making it real like that, there is that bathos you mentioned. I found that like the blood splatter from the battle to be like, I laughed, but it's also like, oh, that's a little vivid, right?
And I think that the poem itself, and I try to get that in the translation, it's kind of working on two levels at almost every moment. You're kind of like, oh, haha, it's mice, but also it's supposed to tug at your heartstrings a little bit, when he squeaks 3 times and so forth. And it's that charming thing that this sort of mini epic is able to do, is it's on the one hand fun, but we're still supposed to, I think, feel for the characters a bit. So I think that this really pulled out that serious comic serious side, which the whole thing about these mini epics is it's about playing with proportion. Yeah. I mean, the idea of an epic is supposed to be kind of large and include a lot of things and be kind of overwhelming. And you have dactylic hexameter, which is making that indication. You have all these grand names, but ultimately you have the proportional thing of actually it's frogs and mice. And, you know, I loved the heads of the gods being human, but only heads up in the clouds. I thought that worked really well too.
It really did. Well, and you know, the proportion thing, and part of what's confusing or challenging, I think, about this parody is how seriously it takes some of its allusions, right? So what I was thinking, especially during the speeches before the battle, is to what extent that Mouse Father's comments should recall Priam in the Iliad, right? He's like, I've had 3 sons who died, or I have 3 sons, only one is left, and you start to feel, and then he like catalogs the way that mice die. Right, and it's like, you know, a weasel got one, this newfangled trap got another, and you're like, am I supposed to be laughing? Am I supposed to be feeling? And it's an uncomfortable place.
I think that it is supposed to be uncomfortable. In fact, it's one of the kind of things to think about is if this is Iliadic, who are the Greeks and who are the Trojans here? Because again, as you say, that kind of mimics Priam. The mice perhaps have some Trojan aspects to them, even though we kind of side with them. And, you know, the frog, King Pufferthroat, he goes on, he says his father is King Peleus,
right.
which of course in the Greek also suggests being made of mud. So it's that wonderful, he's Peleus, like Achilles' father. And then he is also, his mother is basically a water nymph, you know, the way Achilles is, because she's Hydra Medusa or something, like princess of the waters, you know, she who rules the waters. So he has some Achilles tendencies, but it's kind of wonderfully mixed up. So we're not quite sure, maybe. I mean, as humans, we kind of side with the mammals. I think we just automatically go with the mammals. But
except what's interesting about that, though, is to what extent we're supposed to, right? Because you get to the end where there's that threat of genocide against the frogs by the mice, right? Like, or, you know, they're all losing control, and then Zeus sends this absurd army of crabs to end the whole thing. So I've always thought that this catalog of crabs at the end is mostly like a crazy, you know, how do you end something that's insane to begin with? You just take it to another level. But can you, I mean, I think it's hard for people who haven't read the Greek to understand how playful that closing catalog is. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you?
It's been a while since I've looked at the Greek, but for what, you know, it's not immediately clear that they are crabs. They're described in various ways, and you know, we even think about Herodotus and so forth of, you know, creatures that have their eyes in their chest and so forth. There's something quite foreign and exotic. You know, we might even think of, you know, Heracles at some point has a battle with a crab in a lake. So they do tend to kind of come in these mythological things, but they're very Deus ex machina or Carcina ex machina. It is, you feel like, oh, we've got to end this, and it is absurd.
But I think that comment, though, points to why, and partly why this is such an attractive and fun poem to deal with, because you can keep pressing it to different layers, right? You know, there's something absurd about the way the Odyssey ends with the Dea ex machina, the same way the tragedies end. And, you know, when we talk about it in sort of refined form, we're like, well, it makes you think back through it, and what are the problems, right? But the crab intervention, right, sort of turns that over. Like, it's extreme, it's absurd, and it ends up in this sort of folly that I think is sort of a classic touchstone of any comedy.
Generally epics kind of freak out and just sign off.
Right. So this is the crabbiest mic drop ever.
Yes, the crabbiest mic drop, indeed.
Before we bring in the creators and the narrator, what's your favorite scene in the parody? There's one scene that jumps out at you that you love to tell people about.
Well, I think that the deaths with the blood was very moving, and again the sort of serious flickering of human conflict. But I think the drowning mouse scene from below is just a classic cinematic moment of tragedy and pathos, and I liked that there was spaces given, silence or music for some of the things. It wasn't all just rush, get the words out. There were kind of spaces to consider, and the mouse demise.
Well, Alex Purvis has a recent book out about gesture and stuff in Homer, and so animal gesture matters as well. But that scene of drowning follows what is usually my favorite scene to talk about in this. The mouse is on the back of the frog, and as he goes across, he's like, "Hey, this is kind of like Zeus and Europa," right? Which is how we all think all the time, and clearly how a mouse and a frog would think in a Zeus-controlled world. But it's just that sort of moment of what Homeric epic does anyway, right? Which is all the time have people telling stories, encouraging us to think about ourselves in stories, and then suddenly we are, I guess, to the gods as the frogs and mice are. And I always wonder, maybe this is just me getting into interpretive trap where, wait, maybe it's not as funny as I think. Right.
Well, we have to think Zeus and Europa doesn't end terribly well either. So, I mean, it's perhaps a little bit of foreshadowing of a different kind. Not that Europa drowns, but again, that's not a friendly taking across the water.
No. But
one of the kind of intriguing things thinking about it as a text also is I think this is right, and you will know. But there are no epic similes within this, which is kind of because the whole thing is like an epic simile where, the natural world is the epic simile. And this is almost the most extreme and elaborate epic simile that's ever been done. So that it's all kind of one simile.
I really love that because, one of the things that people always talk about with this little epic is this relationship to animal fable. Right, so there's this fable attributed to Aesop, it's number 302, and people wonder, like, was a fable there first? Frogs and mice epic there first? You never know. But it is establishing at its base that invitation of comparison. So even if it's funny, even if it's supposed to be ridiculous, at the core, there's still that human instinct, right? That sort of habit of saying, well, where do I exist in this frog and mouse world? So Hannah, unmute, show us your video, because I'm sure we have 1,000 questions for you. Went way back at the beginning of the year when Paul said, we're going to do the Battle of Frogs and Mice and puppets. Like in my uncreative mind, I'm thinking we're going to have some paper puppets and it's going to be like a gag. This was far beyond that. Right?
Yeah.
So like, tell me about the process. Like, where did this come from? Where is it going?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's such a wonderful poem to make a puppet thing out of. It's like the characters, the names, the bloody battle, the loss. And so I started thinking, okay, so how am I going to make this many frogs and this many mice? How am I going to do it? How am I going to, what are they going to be like? Are they going to be bits of wool with ears that kind of scurry across? Are the frogs going to have mechanical legs and they're going to be able to bounce? And there was all sorts of things going on. Maybe at one point I was thinking about having extensions on fingers so that the fingers could walk, so you'd build the puppet on the hand, on the top of the hand, and the legs would be, fingers to move. So I was trying lots of things with lots of things. And another thing I thought to myself, I've got 2 young children and my house is full of little bits of plastic, balls, bits of tubing. What is this? I don't know. I've got so much, and I thought if I can use that, that's great. So I set this kind of challenge. Okay, let's try and just use like recycled bits of stuff as well. So we've got Calpol tubes in there. We've got tubes from spray bottles of whatever kitchen spray I had at the time. We've got kind of packing wool around the mice. I did have to buy green lycra. I didn't have any green lycra. I don't really wear it very often. So I didn't have any of that. And I decided that they would be, instead of scurrying, I decided that they would be like humans. They've got arms and they've got legs that bend like this. They've each got little faces that are different. So that we could really, and I think that one of the things I would like to do with it is I would like to get to know them more. So I would like to have more time with the frogs but with King Pufferthroat doing the backstroke, on the lake. So you get to see him and his luxuriating in his world, and then get to see the mice and what they're like, what each those, what's a bread gnawer like, what is Nibbleman like, Chiselham, all these, they're different, aren't they? It makes you think of something, makes you think big or little, to see those personalities. That's why I'd like to expand it. Yes, and I made Liquor Plate slightly different, because Liquor Plate runs like that. He doesn't have any arms and legs, but it's all right because he's got loads of personality. And it's so sad. He gets killed by two people. In fact, he gets killed and then somebody else takes him off to give him a good, going over as well, even though he's dead, and we see him at the beginning watching and like being upset by this and this death of his friend. So I was trying to create these little personalities, and use lots of stuff around the house, loads of cardboard. This is the snake. This is a bit of corrugated card and the snake. Kelly Vassy was there on our filming days, making lots of amazing set out of just bits of cardboard. Our house was full of cardboard boxes for months. We couldn't move, but it was good because we made lots of stuff out of them. Yes. Yeah.
One
And then
of the
it was
things
getting,
I really enjoyed seeing was, I think it really worked to occasionally see like the human arms and things. I think that worked really well because it reminds us again of the proportion and the scale that, this is smaller than human scale. So I really it seemed to me, it added another layer to have these flickers of the humans in the background.
it
It
kind
was a nice reminder of the fictionality of it, right? It went in and out of there, but it didn't, for me, it didn't take away the enjoyment at all, because I think part of my brain is worried about the how-ness of it, right? Like, how's this working?
Yeah. I think it's, and seeing a little bit of kind of backstage, seeing a glimpse of how it all works is, I love that, and I don't find it gets in the way of my imagination, because I think with puppets, your mind can just go places, can't it? You're seeing a little bit of something being, and there's a hand there, but your mind can just fill in all the blanks in a wonderful way. And yet you're aware of that this is just on a little hand on a stick and it's being moved around, but I'm thinking about this, and there's something wonderful about that, I think.
So Hannah, when Paul said, "Hey, we're going to do this thing,"
Yes.
had you heard of this poem before? Were you like, "What is wrong with you people?" Or what was your first response to reading the Band of Frogs and Mice?
Well, I think my first response was, how the hell are we going to do this? Because because there's so much that that goes on. There's so much that happens. There's lakes. There's there's death. But the exciting thing about puppets, and I think again, when we look at it again, I'd like to make the battle even bloodier, like the blood splatter there, because puppets can do things, can go places, and because they're puppets, you're like, you're protected, but you're also, it also kind of shows the brutality in a way that's very, very striking. So I would like to go a bit further with that. But yeah, I think that was my initial thought. I was like, yes. But real excitement, because there's just, these characters, they're fantastic. And what a story. Yeah, a great thing to do in your living room over a couple of days. So why not?
How much of the video have the kids seen?
They were watching it earlier because they were in when we were filming as well. So they both wanted to come and watch, and sat in chairs and tried to get into the action a little bit too much. They had to be sent away. But they absolutely loved it. And Una is now kind of passionate about making puppets and talking about making puppet films and puppet shows and constantly talking about frogs and mice. Yeah,
well, I mean,
frogs and mice.
I'm just imagining the effect that this will have in the aggregate over 20 years. We'll have to check back in. But Owen, if you want to unmute and show your video. There are a bunch of great voice actors and performers as part of this, and some of the people we've had before. But what was it like narrating this? I'm going to ask the same question I asked Hannah. Had you heard about this poem before? And if not, what was your reaction to this thing Paul asked you to do?
I hadn't heard of it before. And my reaction was, I suppose, because I have worked with puppets quite a bit, and puppets often have to take on the role of being speaking animals or humanized animals. So I think puppeteers are used to using them in that way. But I did find, in terms of the narration, was the rhythm it's written very beautifully, but there is probably an instinct to try and find. It was a little bit tricky to really nail that rhythm. It took me a few goes to try and get the pace of it, because it is, I suppose, it is an epic. Like, it's not like a stanza, it's not like a 14, lines with all these like very neat couplets. And it's a mix of the rhythm and then of making sure that the story itself is very clear. So that's what I found was the challenge for me.
Yeah. No, and as you probably know, in the Greek, it doesn't rhyme, right? That's not part of the aesthetics of Greek poetry. But Alicia, you did, I think, a beautiful job in this translation of bringing into that sort of play and rhythm of English verse. Thank you, Owen, for bringing that to life there. It's hard for me now to hear you speak and not see a mouse. So I don't know what. I'm going to thank him.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure. Right. But Alicia, sort of, before we move to Paul and some of our announcements, what are some of your thoughts about seeing this performed and having spent so much time translating this poem? What do you think its journey is in the future? And you're still muted. Sorry.
Well, I'm a little overwhelmed. I didn't realize I would be so affected by it. In fact, my 13-year-old came in while it was playing, and she said, "Mom, why did you write something so depressing?" I was like, I translated it. I didn't make it up. But I think it's going to go forward as it always has, but in a new way. I think it is meant to bring people to classics and to Greek and to Homer. And I think it will do that in new and wonderful ways through this, and also maybe now into puppetry and performance and these other things. But, as a translator, it's wonderful to hear your lines spoken and to be spoken by different people. And I liked that there were different accents. I think that also, I kind of appreciated the frogs and the mice had kind of different accents, and that made sense to me. And I'm really looking forward to rewatching it. I felt like I didn't even get half of it as I was watching it. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think I'll do the same thing. I'll get my kids and be like, check this out. And we'll see if we can mess them up as much as Hannah and Paul did theirs. And speaking of Paul, I don't know if it was you or Hannah who had the idea of making this into a fabulous puppet show. But this has been something I was looking forward to all year, partly because I have my own love for the Battle of Frogs and Mice. But I know you have some announcements. So why don't we start with that? We have a competition winners to announce, maybe some of their videos to look at, and then now that we've sort of plateaued with the Frogs and Mice, we can talk about what we might do next year.
Yeah, well, just to say, a huge thank you to Hannah and to Owen and to everyone who was part of creating this episode, and to Alicia as well for letting us use your translation, and to Paul Dry Books as well, because it was just a real thrill to be able to end this particular season of Reading Greek Tragedy Online with this episode. And I suppose wanted to reflect for a moment as well, just to kind of think about sort of in this kind of academic year, we've done 9 episodes, and I was looking through them the other day and realized we've done The Children of Heracles, The Odyssey, a combination of the 2 Iphigenias, Agamemnon, Electra, Oedipus, Tyrannus, Amphitryo, Seneca's Medea, and now the Frogs and Mice. So it's kind of quite a wide range of material that is kind of added to our archive. And we've now got, I think, 64 episodes, which are totally freely available for everyone. So I'm really delighted that that's all up there and can be shared with people. And given that it's the last episode of the season, and Joel, I know that you'll be saying more about this afterwards as well, but I did also just want to say a huge thank you to everyone at the CHS for all of their support. Olivia makes everything happen, and it's just totally amazing, kind of with all of the logistics and technical side, and just helping to promote it, and it's just all round brilliant. But also Tammy and Zoe, Caroline, and many others there, and obviously John Coley, who's watching this evening, who does the artwork as well. So I just wanted to kind of say all of that right now. And so we have a few announcements to make, because as well as creating these episodes, sort of the work that we do has also kind of led to lots of different competitions happening with students in various countries. So in fact, there are a couple of other kind of competitions that are sort of going to be announced quite soon. In Italy, there's been a playing Oedipus and a playing Antigone competition. So I'll be looking at some Antigone videos from students this evening after this. And but the particular announcements that we have to make are to do with the competitions that we ran in the US and Canada, and also in Greece. So we'll start with announcing the winners of our Playing Dionysus competition, which was open to anyone in the US and Canada, and they just had to pick a scene from the Bacchae, and we kind of had fantastic videos created by Amy Pistone and Emma Pauley to help them kind of think about some of the choices they may make. We had some fantastic entries, and you'll see here, I think hopefully up on the graphic, that Corey Davidson and Soo Young Choi were our winners. They're both from the University of Washington, and they win $400 thanks to the support of the SCS, who kind of gave us some money to be able to run this competition. So huge thanks to them. Our first runner-up was William McClelland from the University of Michigan, and our second runners-up were Angela Howell and Eliana Wade. So a huge thank you to all of them for participating, for sharing their art and being inspired by Greek tragedy and what we're doing to send in their videos. And whilst this was going on, we also were running a similar competition in Greece. This was actually called Playing Bacchae, and again was about choosing a scene from the Bacchae and then performing it and uploading it and sending it to us. And so we have winners to announce here, kind of being magically revealed through the power of a PowerPoint. And so we had two separate competitions, one for the high schools and then one for the university level. And we had a fantastic number of entries, and we were really delighted that our winners, I'm delighted to announce that our winners are the music school of the Argolis, and with our runners-up, the junior high school of Thessaloniki and the senior high school of Patras. So huge congratulations to them, and a huge thanks to Martina at the CHS in Nafplio and to the University of the Peloponnese as well. And you can see those same winners there written in Greek, and also we had the university level competition, if we move on to the next one, was won by the university and students from the University of the Peloponnese, with runners-up the Notos Drama School from Crete, and then a combined effort from the University of Patras and the University of Thessaloniki. And again, just a huge thank you to all of the students and many, many students. And in fact, over the course of the different competitions that we've run on different plays, we've had well over 1,000 students sending in videos and being involved in the creation of this, and it's really, really fantastic. We hope that there'll be a new competition in the UK launching quite soon. Plus, we're hoping for there to be another competition in Greece in the next academic year as well. So we'll obviously send out details about that as and when we have all of that information. And actually, what we'd love to do now is share one of the videos from one of the winners that we had, and this is actually from the music school of the Argolis, with a scene from the Bacchae. So we'll share that now.
Η πολιτεία βουλιάζει και ακτινοβολεί θρηματισμένη. Δέομαι σου, με αμφιβολίες και αγωνία στην ψυχή μου. Σε περίμενα, αναστάσιμη οδύνη, σκάβω στην ουσία μου.
Σκάβω στην ουσία μου.
Ανακαλύπτω τα πατήματά μου. Ακούω την αναπνοή μου.
Ακούω την αναπνοή μου.
Τα βλέφαρά μου, διάφανες αυλές. Όταν τα ανοίγω, βλέπω ό,τι υπάρχει. Όταν τα κλείνω, βλέπω ό,τι ποθώ. Νιώθω τα βήματα.
Νιώθω τα βήματα.
Νιώθω τις ανάσες. Νιώθω τα σώματα.
Νιώθω τα σώματα.
Η φωνή μου πρωτάκουστη. Υπέρβαση. Γεώτρηση και γεωμέτρηση. Βαδίζω την ιερή οδό της ύπαρξης. Φωτεινό μονοπάτι, το πρόσωπο όλων των πλασμάτων, όλων των αιώνων, από την αρχή.
Από την αρχή.
Είμαι ο Διόνυσος. Ήρθα, εφανερώθηκα.
Εδώ, στη γη της Θήβας. Ο Δίας είναι ο πατέρας μου
και η Σεμέλη, η κόρη του Κάδμου, με εγέννησε.
Τώρα, το πρόσωπο Θεού, το τρομερό μου πρόσωπο, το έκρυψα.
Πέφτει πάνω του η σκιά
και είναι σαν του ανθρώπου.
Είμαι εδώ.
Και είπα εγώ και βλάστησε.
Η άμπελος των τάφων.
Ήρθα από την πολύ χρυσή γη, την Ασία,
που ταιριάζει τα πλήθη ανθρώπων.
Φανερός να φανώ Θεός στους ανθρώπους.
Τις λειτουργίες μου δίδαξα.
Ανέκραξα.
Θυρσό στα χέρια να κρατούν.
Βέλος και κισό.
Για εκείνον εγώ τραγουδώ.
σαν ένα δέντρο αιωνόβιο έξω από τις ρίζες του. Με το παρόν επάνω από το παρελθόν.
I celebrate myself.
Μαζί του διαστέλλομαι, στο χρόνο και στο χώρο.
Και λιώνω νόμους αξεπέραστους στον χρόνο.
I celebrate myself.
Τι είναι εκείνο μέσα μου που συναντά τους πάντες?
Πάντα και παντού. Και νιώθω σαν στο σπίτι.
I celebrate myself.
Τις αδελφές της μητέρας μου εμαστίγωσαν κι αλόφρονες χύθηκαν έξω.
Μανιασμένες σκόρπισαν. Το μυαλό τους ετάραξαν.
Στις άγριες πέτρες, ψηλά, στα χλωρά έλατα, σπαράζουν.
Αυτή η πόλη, θέλει δε θέλει, θα κοινωνήσει της μανίας μου.
Και ο Περθέας, που τολμά να θεομαχεί, με πολεμά.
Λείπω από τις σπονδές του. Δεν είμαι στις προσευχές του. Την αποκάλυψη του άχραντου θα κάνω. Να δειχθώ Θεός.
Γι' αυτό επήρα θνητού μορφή και όψη ανδρός επήρα.
Θείασός μου, εσείς γυναίκες.
Υψώστε τα φρυγικά σας τύπανα.
Ελάτε, τρέξτε.
Χτυπάτε, χτυπάτε τα.
Να εγερθεί ολόκληρη η πόλη. Να σας δει.
Το όργιο στις βάφτες θα θέλει.
Εγώ του χορού το βήμα.
Έστι νουν τραγωδία.
What is your substance? Whereof are you made?
Μίμησης πράξεως.
That millions of strange shadows on you tend.
Σπουδαίας και τελείας.
Since everyone hath, everyone, one shade.
Μέγεθος εχούσης.
And you but one can every shadow lend.
Ειδισμένο λόγο.
Speak of the spring and foison of the year.
Χωρίς εκάστο των ειδών εν της μορίης.
The one doth shadow of your beauty show.
Δρόντων και ούδη απαγγελίας.
The other as your bounty doth appear.
Διελαίου και φόβο περαίνουσα.
And you in every blessed shape we know.
Την των τιούτων παθημάτων κάθαρσιν.
Ανέβηκα, φίλος ανήφορον, όλες τις κορφές που αγναντεύουν τα πέλαγα.
Το φανταστικό, το πεπερασμένο, το μελλοντικό, δημιουργία και καταστροφή, παύουν να συγκρούονται.
Πόσο η θάλασσα απέχει από τις ακτές του νου μου, πόσο πολύ χαθήκαμε να ψάχνουμε βορρά.
Μα εγώ δεν χάθηκα ποτέ, γιατί ήμουν πάντα εδώ, μες το άγαλμά μου, να γίνομαι, να χάνομαι, να είμαι, για μια αναζήτηση της γένεσης, για ένα έβρικα που αργεί.
Ορθοί σταθείτε άνθρωποι, τραγούδι είμαι, μεθύσι, κλονάρι, με λένε Διόνυσο, δηλαδή μέθη. Ήρθα, πάνω στον αιώνων τις οπλές.
Διθύραμβοι με ακολουθούν, σκιές, μόνος μα ξεχωριστός, για το καλό του ανθρώπου. Αυτός που με όλες τις γλώσσες φτιάχνει μία δική του και τη χαρίζει στους ανθρώπους και ο καθένας τη μεταφράζει και ο καθένας μεταφράζει τον εαυτό του.
Οσία, πότνα θεών.
Θείασος ωραίου Θεού χορευτή του στη λίγη. An unchecked mouth and wild stupidity.
Όλων σας μοίρα κοινή. Το τέλος δυστυχία.
Στους ουρανούς κρίνεται των ανθρώπων η πράξη.
Το σοφόν δε ου σοφία.
Our lives are short.
Και αυτός που τα μικρά κοιτάζει, χάνει τα εδώ της ζωής.
Οι βάκες ορμούν, χωρίς τέλος η τελετή.
Our son of Zeus,
δαίμονας πανηγυριών,
μισή, δω μη ταύτα μέλη.
ειδονικά των καιρών να περνά.
What simple people practice and believe, that's what I welcome. That's the way I live.
Just amazing work there by those entries.
Yeah, I mean, a huge congratulations to the Music School of Argolis, and you can watch many of the entries from the Greek competition. There's a dedicated playlist on the CHS website, on the YouTube page of the CHS YouTube page. Then you can just look at the playing back eye list, and you'll see many of the entries there, and you can enjoy them. And just to say a huge thank you, huge congratulations as well to the University of the Peloponnese for winning the university competition. And Joel, you mentioned you asked sort of what might be coming next, and if we have the opportunity to carry on doing more of this, then we would absolutely love to. It's been wonderful as part of this season to do quite a few live events, including readings and workshops, and we hope to do more of that. I've got a desire to do some Thucydides in performance next year as well, and possibly some Menander, a bit more Roman, revisiting a few tragedies, and also working with some more student groups as well. We've had actually 2 different groups of students working and performing this year, and that's been really wonderful, and it'd be great to do more of that. But a huge thank you to everyone, and especially, a huge thank you to you, Joel, for everything that you do with this. And that's it from me.
Well, I want to echo the thanks. I also want to, have a note of sort of humility in this. 3 years ago, however long it was ago that we started this project, we were just throwing things together and trying to make it by week to week during the pandemic. And when I see the performances of these students who are engaging with material and sharing it with us, I'm just amazed by what they do with it, how they bring life to the past, and how they go on living with it and through it. And then to see, Hannah and Paul, your work with the Battle of Frogs and Mice today, it had a feeling to me of sort of deep pandemic work, like the madness that grabbed all of us. Like, we're all going to stay in this apartment and make puppets of frogs and mice and then have them kill each other, right? That's right up there with, let's say, the sea shanty period of 2020 or 2021, whenever that was. But it was really great. So, before closing, let's thank everyone who's made this possible over the years. Keith Sohn, who was here in the beginning, the Kosmos Society, Janet, Helen, and Sarah, always there in the background helping us out. Amy Pistone, who's there, John Coley, Lana Coley, who was there early on to produce, Olivia, as we said before, and everyone who's been there on YouTube and sending us emails. We don't actually know what we're going to do next year. We call it as we're going to. So if you guys have ideas, reach out. Right? Let us know what you think. And Hannah has now a puppet version of me. So if I go missing, there'll be an ersatz Joel to take over in the future. And, for today, Alicia, thank you for being so generous with your time and your sleepiness. Also for using your translation. It's great work. It's such a privilege for us to just be able to reach out to artists and poets of the world and say, join us in our madness.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much for using the translation and bringing it to life.
Well, and I hope people will go out and get their own copy of it. To everybody who's watching, have a safe summer, stay well, take care of your loved ones, and join us again in the fall for more frogs, more mice, and whatever it is that the next year brings.